In the annals of human conflict, where courage is often measured in acts of grand heroism and strategic brilliance, sometimes the most profound impact comes from the most unexpected sources. The First World War, a brutal crucible of steel and mud, witnessed countless acts of bravery. But few stories resonate with such a unique blend of desperation, determination, and sheer improbable success as that of a tiny feathered messenger. This is the story of a brave carrier pigeon, a silent hero whose perilous flight through a storm of bullets and shrapnel saved an entire battalion from annihilation. The year is 1918. The Great War, a conflict that had already devoured millions of lives, was entering its final, most ferocious phase. On the Western Front, the battlefields of France and Belgium were a scarred testament to human endurance and suffering. Among the most brutal engagements of this period was the Meuse-Argonne offensive, launched by the American Expeditionary Forces, or AEF, against entrenched German positions. This was America's largest and bloodiest operation of the war, a relentless push through dense forests and fortified lines, designed to break the stalemate and bring an end to the global nightmare. Imagine, if you can, the conditions. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, under a perpetual canopy of grey skies, often obscured by the smoke of artillery and the acrid smell of gas. The landscape was a churned, muddy wasteland, pockmarked by shell craters, crisscrossed by barbed wire, and riddled with the labyrinthine trenches that defined this brutal form of warfare. Rain was a constant companion, turning everything into a clinging, sucking mire. The air vibrated with the distant rumble of heavy guns, punctuated by the closer, sharper crack of rifle fire and the terrifying whistle of incoming shells. For the soldiers on the front lines, every moment was a test of nerve, every breath a gamble. It was into this inferno that the 77th Liberty Division, a unit largely composed of draftees from New York City, found itself thrust. These were men from the bustling streets of Manhattan, the quiet boroughs, and the diverse communities of a burgeoning metropolis, now facing the unimaginable horrors of modern combat. They were known for their resilience, their street smarts, and their ability to adapt. But even the most seasoned veterans would have struggled with the predicament that awaited a specific segment of this division. On October 2, 1918, elements of the 38th, 7th and 6th Regiments, under the command of Major Charles Whittlesey, were ordered to advance deep into the Argonne Forest. Their objective was to push forward, break through German lines, and link up with French forces on their left flank and other American units on their right. The plan was audacious, relying on rapid movement and coordinated attack. For a brief, exhilarating period, it seemed to work. Whittlesey's men, fueled by a desperate hope for victory, advanced further than any other American unit in their sector. They achieved their objective, pushing through a heavily wooded ravine known as Charlevoix Ravine, and establishing a new front line. But the fog of war is thick, and communication, even in the best of circumstances, was a precarious dance. As Whittlesey's battalion pushed ahead, their flanks, both French and American, failed to keep pace. The units that were supposed to protect their sides were either held up by fierce German resistance or had become disoriented in the dense, unfamiliar terrain. Suddenly, and terrifyingly, Major Whittlesey's force found itself isolated. They were cut off from the main American lines, surrounded on three sides by German forces, and trapped in a shallow depression, vulnerable to attack from all directions. The situation was dire. With no reinforcements, dwindling supplies, and no clear path for retreat, the battalion dug in, forming a defensive perimeter. They were approximately 550 men strong when they began their advance, but casualties were mounting rapidly. The German forces, realizing the Americans were isolated, began to concentrate their fire, launching relentless machine gun attacks and artillery barrages. The sounds of battle were deafening, the air thick with smoke and the cries of the wounded. Then came the most horrifying realization of all. As the German shells rained down, interspersed with the familiar thud of friendly artillery, a chilling truth dawned upon the trapped soldiers. Their own artillery, unaware of their advanced position, was systematically shelling them. The very forces meant to support them were now inadvertently contributing to their destruction. This was not just a mistake, it was a death sentence. The friendly fire was devastating, causing more casualties than the German attacks at certain points. Panic began to set in. How do you stop an attack when the attackers are your own allies? How do you communicate your desperate plight when every line of communication is severed? The need to relay their precise location, to scream stop to their own guns, became the most urgent, life or death mission. They were trapped, surrounded, and being shelled by both friend and foe. Hope for the lost battalion, as they would come to be known, was rapidly dwindling. The stage was set for a desperate gamble, a reliance on the most unlikely of heroes. Trapped in the Charlevoix ravine, the situation for Major Whittlesey's lost battalion deteriorated by the hour. The friendly fire, a tragic consequence of the rapid advance and broken communication, was relentless. Every incoming shell was a cruel twist of the knife, a reminder that their own side was unknowingly contributing to their demise. The urgency to communicate their position, to shout their coordinates to their own artillery, became paramount. But in the brutal reality of trench warfare, communication was a constant challenge. Field telephones, while revolutionary, were notoriously unreliable. Their wires were easily severed by artillery shells, shrapnel, or even the movement of troops. Runners, brave soldiers dispatched to carry messages across no man's land, faced a gauntlet of machine gun fire, sniper nests, and artillery barrages. Their chances of success were slim, and their lives were often sacrificed in vain. Major Whittlesey, a former lawyer from New York, understood the gravity of their isolation. He ordered his men to try every available method. Runners were dispatched, one after another, scrambling through the treacherous terrain, dodging bullets, and navigating the maze of craters. Each attempt was met with failure. The Germans, keenly aware of the battalion's trapped position, had tightened their cordon, establishing machine gun posts that covered every possible escape route. The runners either fell to enemy fire, were captured, or simply could not penetrate the German lines. The silence from headquarters, the lack of any response, was a chilling confirmation of their continued isolation. As the days dragged on, the battalion's supplies dwindled. Food became scarce, then non-existent. Water, a precious commodity, was rationed to the barest minimum, leaving men parched and weak. Medical supplies ran out, leaving the wounded to suffer without proper care. The cold, the damp, the constant threat of attack, and the gnawing hunger began to take a heavy toll on morale. The psychological burden of being trapped with no clear path to rescue began to wear down even the most resilient. Whispers of despair began to circulate among the ranks. How long could they hold out? Would anyone even know they were here? It was in this desperate hour that the battalion turned to an ancient, yet remarkably effective, form of communication: carrier pigeons. While seemingly anachronistic in an age of machine guns and poison gas, pigeons had proven their worth throughout history, and the First World War was no exception. Both sides employed thousands of these remarkable birds, establishing dedicated pigeon lofts behind the lines. These birds were meticulously trained to fly from the front lines back to their home lofts, carrying vital messages in small capsules attached to their legs. They were faster than runners, could fly over impassable terrain, and were often the only reliable link when all other forms of communication failed. The American forces, like their Allied counterparts, had brought their own contingent of carrier pigeons to the front. These birds were part of the Signal Corps, carefully tended by dedicated pigeon handlers who understood their unique abilities and temperaments. Each pigeon was a valuable asset, a potential lifeline. Major Whittlesey had a small number of these feathered messengers with him. He had already dispatched 2 pigeons earlier in the day, hoping they could break through the German defenses and reach headquarters. But the wait was agonizing. Hours passed, then a full day, with no sign of a response. The grim reality was that the pigeons, like the runners, faced immense danger. German snipers were trained to target them, and the sheer volume of shrapnel and bullets in the air made any flight a perilous gamble. The first pigeon, carrying a message about their initial position, likely fell victim to enemy fire or simply became disoriented in the chaos. The second, dispatched with an even more urgent plea for artillery support, also failed to arrive. Each failed attempt chipped away at the dwindling hope of the trapped men. They were running out of options, running out of time, and most critically, running out of pigeons. Only one bird remained, a small, unassuming creature, yet upon its tiny wings rested the fate of over 500 men. This final bird was their last, desperate hope. With their last 2 pigeons failing to deliver their messages, and friendly artillery continuing to pound their position, Major Whittlesey and his lost battalion faced an impossible choice: surrender, or make one final desperate attempt at communication. The decision was clear: they would fight to the last man, but not without one more try to alert their command. And so their gaze fell upon the last remaining bird in their possession, a small blue-check hen named Cher Ami. Cher Ami, whose name translates to dear friend in French, was not just any pigeon. She was a veteran, a reliable messenger with a proven track record of successful deliveries. She had already completed several missions in the Meuse-Argonne sector, navigating the treacherous skies and consistently returning to her loft with vital intelligence. Her handlers knew her temperament, intelligent, resilient, and remarkably calm under pressure. But even her seasoned experience could not fully prepare her for the hellish journey that lay ahead. The message Major Whittlesey carefully scribbled on a piece of onion skin paper, barely larger than a postage stamp, was concise and chillingly urgent. It read, "We are along the road parallel to 2076. 4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." The coordinates were precise, the plea desperate. This was not just a request for help, it was a cry for survival against their own forces. The tiny scroll was carefully placed into the aluminum capsule and fastened to Cher Ami's left leg. The weight of over 500 lives now rested on this fragile connection. It was approximately 1:00 p.m. on October 4, 1918. With a heavy heart, the Pigeon handler released Cher Ami into the grey, smoke-filled sky. The moment she ascended, she became a tiny vulnerable target in a vast hostile environment. The air above the Argonne Forest was a swirling vortex of danger. German snipers, ever vigilant, were trained to spot and eliminate these winged messengers. Machine gunners, hearing the distinctive flutter of wings, would turn their weapons skyward, and the constant, indiscriminate rain of artillery shells and shrapnel made any open space a death trap. Cher Ami, driven by instinct and training, immediately oriented herself towards her home loft, miles away behind the American lines. She began her arduous flight, a solitary speck against the backdrop of war. Below her the landscape was a mosaic of destruction, shattered trees, churned earth, and the grim evidence of human conflict. The sounds of battle must have been deafening, a cacophony of explosions, gunfire and distant shouts. Suddenly, a crack ripped through the air. A German bullet, fired with precision, struck Cher Ami. The tiny bird faltered, tumbling through the air, seemingly destined to fall to the earth and join the countless other casualties of the war. The hearts of the men watching from below must have sunk. Their last hope gone. But Cher Ami was no ordinary pigeon. Despite being hit in the breast, with a bullet tearing through her delicate flesh, she somehow managed to regain her composure. Her flight became more labored, her wings beating with a desperate urgency. She was bleeding, her body reeling from the impact. Another shot rang out, and this time it was even more devastating. Her left leg, the very leg carrying the crucial message, was nearly severed, hanging by a tendon. One of her eyes was also blinded by shrapnel. Any lesser creature would have succumbed. Any logical being would have given up. But Cher Ami, driven by an innate, almost incomprehensible will to survive and complete her mission, pushed on. She continued to fly, a tiny wounded arrow, aimed at salvation. Her flight was no longer graceful, it was a raw, visceral struggle against gravity, pain, and the overwhelming odds. She flew low, zigzagging, perhaps using the terrain for cover, but never deviating from her course. The journey that should have taken minutes stretched into an agonizing 25 minutes, each second a testament to her incredible resolve. The men of the lost battalion could only wait, their ears straining for any sign of a distant message, their hopes now hanging by the thinnest of threads, carried on the broken wings of a truly brave carrier pigeon. The minutes stretched into an eternity for the lost battalion. Every shell that landed near them, every burst of friendly fire was a stark reminder of their desperate situation. They had sent their last hope, a small, wounded pigeon, into the maelstrom of the Argonne. All they could do now was wait and pray that Cher Ami, against all odds, would make it through. Miles away, at the divisional headquarters, the pigeon handlers of the Cher Ami Army Signal Corps maintained their vigilant watch. These were men who understood the vital role their feathered charges played, and they knew the risks involved. They had seen many birds fail to return, victims of the brutal battle, but they also knew the incredible resilience of these creatures. Their eyes were constantly scanning the horizon, listening for the telltale flutter of wings. Then after what felt like an agonizingly long 25 minutes, a faint, erratic flutter was heard. A small dark shape appeared in the sky, struggling against the wind, its flight path wavering. It was Cher Ami. As she drew closer, the handlers could see the extent of her injuries, a gaping wound in her breast, her left leg dangling uselessly, and one eye clouded with blood. She was a mess, but she was alive, and she was home. With a final heroic effort, Cher Ami landed on the ledge of her loft, utterly exhausted, her tiny body trembling. The pigeon handler, a man named Sergeant John Carney, rushed forward, his heart pounding. He gently retrieved the severely wounded bird, his immediate concern for her life. But then his eyes fell upon the small, aluminum capsule, still miraculously attached to her mangled leg. With trembling fingers, he carefully detached it.
Inside was the message, written in Major Whittlesey's hand, a desperate plea for salvation. "We are along the road parallel to 2076. 4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." The words were stark, direct, and horrifying. The realization that their own men were being shelled by friendly fire sent a jolt through the headquarters. There was no time to lose. The message was immediately rushed to General Alexander, the commander of the 77th Division. The general, upon reading the urgent dispatch, understood the gravity of the situation. His men were being annihilated by their own guns. He immediately ordered a cessation of the artillery barrage on the specified coordinates. The thundering roar of friendly artillery, which had been a constant terrifying backdrop to the lost battalion's ordeal, slowly began to subside. But stopping the friendly fire was only the first step. The battalion was still surrounded, isolated, and under constant German attack. A rescue mission had to be organized, and quickly. Fresh American troops were immediately dispatched, guided by the newly confirmed coordinates, to break through the German lines and reach Whittlesey's men. It was a race against time, a desperate push to save their comrades before the Germans could launch a final decisive assault. For the men of the lost battalion, the sudden silence from their own artillery was the first glimmer of hope in days. They didn't know why, but the friendly fire had stopped. Then through the chaos of battle, they began to hear new sounds, the distinct crack of American rifles, the familiar shouts of their own language, growing closer. Finally, after 5 days of relentless fighting, starvation, thirst, and the constant threat of annihilation, the rescue forces broke through. The scene was one of immense relief, exhaustion, and raw emotion. The men of the lost battalion were emaciated, many wounded, their uniforms tattered and mud-caked. But they were alive. Of the original 550 men who had advanced, only 94 walked out of the ravine unscathed. Many more were wounded, and over 100 had been killed. The sight of their rescuers, the outstretched hands, offering water and food, was a moment of profound gratitude. They had been given up for lost, written off as casualties of the war. But a tiny brave pigeon, against all odds, had delivered their cry for help, turning despair into salvation. The miracle of Cher Ami's flight had saved a battalion. The immediate aftermath of the lost battalion's rescue was a mixture of grim recovery and profound relief. While the men were safely extracted, the toll of their ordeal was immense. But amidst the somber accounting of casualties, a singular act of heroism shone brightly, capturing the attention and admiration of the entire American expeditionary forces. The hero was not a general, nor a decorated soldier, but a small, feathered messenger, Cher Ami. Upon her arrival at headquarters, grievously wounded but mission accomplished, Cher Ami was immediately rushed to the medical tent. The army medics, more accustomed to treating human casualties, turned their attention to the tiny bird. They worked diligently patching her wounds, splinting her shattered leg, and doing everything they could to save her life. It was a testament to the value placed on these avian messengers, and the recognition of the extraordinary feat she had just accomplished. Cher Ami's recovery was slow but steady. Despite the efforts, her left leg, the one that had carried the crucial message, could not be fully saved. A small wooden peg was fashioned to replace the missing part, a permanent reminder of her sacrifice. Her injuries were severe, but her spirit remained unbroken. Her story quickly spread through the ranks, reaching General John J. Pershing, the commander of the AEF. Pershing himself recognized the immense courage and vital contribution of the Pigeon. Cher Ami was awarded the Croix de Guerre with a palm leaf, one of France's highest military honors, for her heroic service. This was an unprecedented honor for an animal, a testament to the profound impact of her single flight. She was also later awarded the Distinguished Service Cross by the United States Army, a rare and significant recognition for a non-human. After her recovery, Cher Ami was deemed too injured for further combat duty. She was carefully transported back to the United States, where she became a national hero. Her arrival was met with fanfare, and she was celebrated as a symbol of courage and the unsung heroes of the war. She lived out the remainder of her life at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, a beloved and honored veteran, until her passing in 1919. Her body was later preserved, and is now proudly displayed at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, a permanent reminder of her extraordinary bravery. Cher Ami's story, while perhaps the most famous, was not unique in its essence. Throughout World War I, and later in World War II, carrier pigeons played an indispensable role in military communications. Thousands of these birds served on all fronts, carrying vital messages, intelligence, and reports when all other forms of communication had failed. They were trained meticulously, often spending months in specialized lofts, learning to navigate the chaos of the battlefield and return to their home. These avian messengers faced immense dangers, not just enemy fire, but also harsh weather, predators, and exhaustion. Many did not survive their missions, sacrificing their lives in the line of duty. Other notable pigeon heroes include Joe, who saved over 1,000 British troops in Italy during WWI, and Mocha, another WWI pigeon, who delivered a crucial message despite being blinded. These birds were truly unsung heroes, their bravery often overlooked in the grand narratives of human warfare. The story of Cher Ami and the Lost Battalion serves as a powerful reminder of several profound truths about war and heroism. It underscores the critical importance of communication, even in its most basic forms, in the midst of chaos. It highlights the unexpected sources of courage, demonstrating that bravery knows no species. And it reminds us that while technology advances, sometimes the simplest, most fundamental tools can make the difference between life and death. Cher Ami's legacy extends beyond her individual act of bravery. She stands as a symbol of perseverance, of the indomitable will to complete a mission against overwhelming odds. Her small, wounded body, pushing through the bullets and the pain, embodies the spirit of all those who served, human and animal alike, in the crucible of the Great War. Her story ensures that even in the most brutal chapters of history, there are moments of extraordinary, feathered miracles that deserve to be remembered, celebrated, and honored for generations to come. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more historical insights, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember the brave carrier pigeon who saved a battalion.